So I ended up having to put myself through school. And so I was looking for an affordable place and some place that I could learn, and USM became the place that I started. I remember one of my professors, Dr. Deere back then, I think it was an intermediate class, he graded on a scale. So the person that made the highest grade got the A, and then they would go 90%, whatever that grade was, would be a B, and then et cetera. And he gave 3 exams, and I remember taking the first exam and I aced it. And of course, I got ragged by the people in the class, and why'd you, et cetera, et cetera. So then he did the second test. Similar thing happened. Obviously, I got ridiculed a lot more by the students, right? What are you doing, et cetera. Dr. Deere called me into his office. He said, Gary, he says, I know that you're probably getting pressure to give up on this test. He said, I'm gonna tell you one thing. If you don't ace this test and be the top one, you're gonna get a B in my class. He was serious. And that was unacceptable. So I realized that you always have to do your best. I kind of learned that lesson back in the day. You know, Hall of Fame, to me, I've been to a couple of the banquets and et cetera, and saw the people up there, and there's been some really great people that have come up before me. And so I'm very humbled. I really am, to even be thought of that I would be a part of that group. So when you receive a recognition like this, it's like, oh wow, somebody saw it and they really thought I did a good job, or they thought highly enough of me to get this award. So yeah, I'm very appreciative, but extremely humbled by the process itself. Legacy. You know, I just want to be remembered long term that I made things better in what I did. So my legacy, I guess, would be that I helped others move forward.
I came to Southern Miss without knowing, really, but I knew one person, and I came on a golf scholarship in 1979. I wasn't a very good college golfer, and I got hurt early in my career. My parents weren't going to support me to be in school if I didn't work. So I got a job at a bank, First Mississippi National at that time, working in data processing, worked night shifts. So I would go to school in the day, and I would do this night shift. I would get home at 1. Everybody would be out partying and having a good time, and for me I needed to do something that made the difference. So that gave me the discipline that I needed to both finish school and start a career and have maybe a leg up on somebody that might have better grades but had no work experience. So I relied heavily on that, and for me it worked out. And so I felt compelled to give back whenever I could have. There's a guilt factor, right? That I was such a terrible college golfer that maybe I need to do something else for the school. It gave me the opportunity to give back, and when this project came along, I really just wanted to be a big part of it. Well, this is going to be a terrific space for Eddie and Colton to recruit. Having this facility gives them one more thing to go out and talk to a student athlete about. And these facilities make all the difference. You can look at all the bigger programs, you can see where the facilities, where they put their money, and what kind of kids show up. And I think this will do nothing but help us get to a higher level. And I think people forget how great this university is, the amount of graduates that they put out into the workplace, the opportunity to continue to showcase this university. And I love the way Dr. Paul is approaching it. Is to get everyone involved, because we have to lift each other up together. We can't do it with individuals, and we have lost a lot of our biggest donors over the last 10 years. The next level needs to step up, and I'm going to try and be part of that. That's the legacy you want to leave, and that is where you've made it better for someone else, who then you ask them to make it better for the next person too.
Well, we were actually walking up, and I couldn't help but laugh, because those steps, I can remember standing out there for hours, passing out flyers that said, "Just say Julie," because that was our campaign slogan. And I was running for president. And so there would be all the presidential candidates out there. And when it became Shoemaker Square, I was in my first year of law school. And I had the opportunity to come back and they asked me to speak. And that was it was just a very sweet time in my life. Tom Shoemaker was the Dean of Students when I was SGA president. He and his admin were actually the people who set me up with my husband. And so it brought back a lot of sweet memories walking up the steps. One of the things that I always loved about Southern Miss was that it was okay if you weren't in a sorority, and it was okay if you were. But I do think that for me, it was something that gave me an instant connection. And to this day, I keep in touch with many people who I was in sorority life with. I may not have talked to them in years, but I will never forget opening the door after my mother had passed and having flowers from a sorority sister I had not talked to in 3 years. And it was just that moment where, it kind of took my breath away. I think the thing that I always think about with Southern Miss is just the fact I had so many people in my life who would encourage me and push me out of my comfort zone. I think about those moments. I think about the moments when Dr. Paul called me and said, I got an opportunity I think you should apply for. And I was like, what's that? He said, I think you should go be an intern in Washington, D.C. At the time, Trent Lott was the majority leader, which was a huge deal for Mississippi. It gave me a whole different perspective on the world, because my world right then had always been Mississippi. But you think because of that person, it made a true impact on my life. And what you realize is I have an obligation and a responsibility to give back.
There is some irony in the fact that Miss Ogletree was my first grade teacher, and now I'm sitting in the Ogletree house receiving this award. So I'm from Hattiesburg, and my dad taught history out here for 50 years, and my mother taught at the English Language Institute. So I like to say that I was born a Golden Eagle. So I knew really from the time I was probably 3 or 4 or 5, whenever you're old enough to realize you're going somewhere, that I wanted to be a Golden Eagle, yeah. My dad took me one time, I guess I was probably about 12, and it was rain. I mean, it was literally a monsoon. And we sat up in the upper deck, which is where the faculty tickets were. And at the time, I wasn't thinking that my dad would probably rather be at home. But now when that I've gotten older, and when it rains, you really would rather be at home. So I always appreciated that, the fact that he would take me to those games, even though I knew he probably didn't really want to be there. I met my wife at USM. I was a sophomore. She was a freshman. I remember the day we met. We were working on the homecoming day floats, and my sister was in her sorority, and so I think she was trying to help set us up. And I remember this one time that I was at the house and the phone rang, and it was Angela, but Angela hadn't called me. My sister had hooked us both up and then hung up. I guess that call triggered a couple of dates, and 35 years later, we've raised 4 kids, and my wife and I wanted to do something for my mom and dad. So we did a donation to name one of the offices here after them. It's significant for me to share this award with my dad. I can remember going to the dinner on Friday night and thinking how neat that was, that my dad was being honored in that way. And just to have a chance to be honored similarly to him means a lot to me.
When you grow up in the Guard is a pretty tight-knit family. It can seem large, but the truth is, as you get older and you hang around long enough, it gets smaller, and it becomes a community that you're kind of invested in. Southern Miss was a really big part of me becoming involved in the National Guard. So when I first came to Southern, I was not a great student. I had a lot of distractions. I actually met my wife here. She was a really good student, and She was a big part of me kind of turning all of my academia stuff around. I loved USM. I gained a lot from USM. I owe them a lot more than I can ever give them. In any other large setting in a university, I probably would not have gotten that same encouragement. But when I got to Southern, there was this different kind of unique, they really cared. I don't know that I would have been able to thrive and have the same outcome if I'd have been anywhere else. The idea that I could come from here, go to DC, operate as the overall strategy of what the Guard was trying to do in terms of advocacy for all 54 states across the nation, it was pretty attractive. And I wanted to go do it because, again, it allowed me to be impactful for the National Guard. You know, the service that these young men and women did by serving in the Army and Air National Guard over the last 25 years during the global war on terror, it needs to be written about. People need to be aware of it, and that really is what drives me. They deserve to have their stories told, and the only way to do that is to create this institute where all of the professors, the history professors, can go out, read the stories, learn about these individuals, and then write about the units and the people who make them up.
So how did I get to Southern Miss? So of course we would come down by 49 and I would see this building with all the funny letters on it. You know, now it's the Panhellenic building is what it was called then. But then we would always stop in Hattiesburg and have breakfast at one of the institutions in there called the International House of Pancakes. And so you would sit in the parking lot and I would see the dome and all of that. So this place has always kind of fascinated me. My mom was an educator for about 45 years, and one summer wound up going there and doing a summer camp there while she was taking her courses. So that's how I wound up there. You know, probably the first person to get to USM because of IHOP. You know, that's how I got there. Later on, I remember sitting in my room in Bond Hall as a freshman and staring out into the vastness of the parking lot and thinking to myself, you know, wow, I'm in college and I'm by myself, you know, and I gotta make my own decisions. And I kind of, from that, I began to grow up, you know, and then pledged in Kappa Kappa Psi, which is the band fraternity. And then later on I pledged Alpha, Mu Xi chapter, and getting involved there and just kind of being in those organizations and making my way around the campus via those organizations and understand that these are going to be the memories. Like, as I said, I have too many. How much time do you have? I can give you a great story from every year if you want. But that these are going to be some of the best times of your life. And these friends that you meet in college, you're going to carry these people 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. Continue to tell this story. Continue to write it. Because again, it's ours. And no one else is going to be able to tell it. No one else is going to be able to live it but us. And continuing to understand and finding again what that it is that makes us special. You know, that's what Southern Miss is. That's what the Southern Miss family is about.
I'm from little old Mendenhall, and I just shopped for a scholarship, and Dr. McCain called me 2 days after I interviewed with him and said, I want to give you a full presidential academic scholarship. And I'm going, hello? But I couldn't believe it, so I immediately said, I'm there. I got involved in the Student Senate and the University Activities Council. I got involved heavily into Chi-O, and I was blessed to be, you know, Miss Southern, which I represented the University of Southern Mississippi, and then got to go to the Miss Mississippi pageant. For some reason, they picked me, and I went to Atlantic City, and as my mother said, you weren't in the top 10, honey, but I know you were number 11. But what an honor to represent Southern, and praise the Lord for Dr. McCain and him changing my life, because I can't say just he did, but that avenue changed my life. Going to Southern Miss and having all the opportunities, and now having this accolade of the Hall of Fame that I'm just over the moon about. I was driving with my sisters when Jerry called me and said, you know, Mollie, we want to induct you into the Southern Miss Hall of Fame. And I had to pull over. It was just so moving for me. I just had to pull over and just have a little weep. I feel like I was embedded in Southern Miss. I feel like if you are, and if you're true to what you believe, then you're not going to deviate. I am who I am.